Paul Catalina.
Welcome in to the Triple Option. I'm Paul Catalina. It is Thursday. That's why you see a different camera angle here. You know, you get to see this in all of its glory. So, welcome to Jabba's palace. All I'm missing is a little like rat thing and Princess Leia, and that's what's going to happen here. But Pierre Noujaim from Fox 9 in Minneapolis joins us today. And Pierre, you will not be able to contain yourself waiting for the third segment, which is Pick'em.
Oh man!
Guess who's winning Pick'em?
It can't be. There's no way it can be me.
It's you.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
I should have gone to Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're.
I'm stunned by that.
Yeah.
Stunned.
Yeah, you have a whopping 1-game lead over the rest of it. Well, you have a 3-game lead over Garrett, who was 0 for 5 and will be, when we get it from Amazon, wearing a T-shirt that says "Roll Tide, y'all." That is one size too small for him.
Oh, that's I can feel the pain all the way here in Minnesota. I really can. That's got to be just a god awful feeling to have to wear that T-shirt.
It's brutal. Like, I need an Aaron Tippin cassette tape to go with it.
Kids, by the way, a cassette tape was a fun little rectangular device where we used to listen to music back in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah. It was wild. And then like one time you think like, oh, I'm going to listen to my favorite song. And then it was just done because the tape unspooled and got caught up in your cassette player. And then everything was ruined. So
yeah, correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely. All right, Pierre. So last week you had to cover the defensive slugfest that was Nebraska and Minnesota. And one of the games we'll be talking about is Nebraska and Colorado here in the first segment. Nebraska has to take on Deion Sanders and that high-flying offense. You got to see them up close and personal. Defensively, they shut Minnesota down. Absolutely stonewalled them. Minnesota's offense obviously going to be different than Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and all of that. But offensively, they looked exactly the same as Minnesota.
Yeah, it was. Listen, that was a really hard football game to watch. It was not for the faint of heart, with the exception of in the second quarter. No, third. Was it second or third quarter? I wanted to forget about that game so bad. I just kind of put it deep into the catacombs of my brain. I believe it was third quarter. The only exciting play of the game, well, I should say the only exciting one, was when Sims that double lateral that got botched and then somehow turned into a touchdown. And we're looking at each other in the press box like, what is happening in this game? But Nebraska, their offense, they outgained Minnesota offensively. But the turnovers absolutely killed them. 4 turnovers on the day. And Minnesota has 2 NFL caliber players in their secondary in Tyler Nubin and Justin Wally. And both of those guys came up huge for Minnesota. So it was not the game I was expecting. I thought it would be a little more like a 24-20 or a 24-17. Matt Rhule's offense, we've seen him coach, the type of offense that is a free-flowing, up and down the field kind of offense. That was not the case with what we saw. It might be just the early opening week jitters or kinks you have to work out, but boy, was that an ugly football game. No. It was terrible.
And the thing is, we'll lead off with Deion. I'm not going to build up to Deion, but your thoughts on Deion week 1. You're a fiery opinionist when it comes to NFL history, and I know that you're a Dolphins fan, so really you're probably apoplectic on Deion's playing career because he never really affected your team at all in the 90s.
No, but my first memory of Deion actually was the year he came over to the 49ers after he left the Falcons, because I was living in Northern California, so I would watch a lot of 49ers games. That was 94, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Deion comes over to the Niners, and to much fanfare, the Niners go on to win the Super Bowl that year, and he was an instrumental part of that team. And I remember the game with him going back to Atlanta and trading fists with Andre Rison and the high step. You want to talk about, you go out on the play. You probably did the same thing. You're out at recess. You're playing football. You're playing basketball. You're playing soccer. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. If you did something you felt was electric, you are high stepping it down the field, and that kind of swag it's never left him. It's still there with him to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. So he and Matt Rhule, to me, is the best year one at their school coaching matchup that you could possibly imagine for a bunch of different reasons. But I do wonder, and Matt Rhule, he has a ton of transfers. He doesn't have 80, but how fast Deion was able to do this compared to a guy who has, skins on the wall in Matt Rhule, and Deion has Jackson State, but he is Deion, and it shows you the absolute power of celebrity, that Deion can get everybody talking about him right away, and Matt Rhule still has more of a classic build to do.
I am sure Matt probably likes it that way. I mean, I'm sure he's like, that's fine. You can have all the attention on Colorado that you want. I'm just going to put my nose to the ground and build this program, back to prominence the way we remember it back in the 90s and early 2000s. But I was just thinking about this week. When is the last time anyone ever talked about Colorado football the way it is? I mean, Cordell Stewart was the last thing that I can really remember about CU football. It's been a long time, and I was stunned by the result on Saturday. Like, I'm sure a lot of people were. I mean, maybe they wouldn't use the word stunned, but I was truly stunned by what I saw in the fact that they walk into Fort Worth and just win the game in the manner that they did. And now you have everybody believing. Now you're a believer, because I think the preseason, the odds makers had Colorado as the lowest win total of all the Division I schools. If I'm not mistaken, it was really, really low. I think it was 3 or maybe even below 3.
I think
like a 2.7.
I think I saw a lot of 3.5 over-unders from Vegas. Yeah.
So now it's one thing to get hyped up in practice, as you know, and buy into your coach and let it play out. But when you get an immediate reaction and immediate gratification the way that they did at TCU, now you're really a believer. And now you have a dangerous team on your hands, because now they really believe. And people thought maybe it might be a little bit of a pomp and circumstance for the first 6 weeks, and maybe he crashes and burns, but eventually gets it there maybe next year or the year after. It's now. It's happening now. It's immediate. And it's, if I'm a Colorado fan, I'm riding this wave as long as I can.
I had their ceiling at 6-6 because their schedule's really tough. Nebraska's going to be – that's a tough game no matter what you say. Like, it's an old-school rivalry game. And Nebraska, the fans are going to show up there that have their allotment, and they're going to try to make it like it was back in the old Big 8 days when those two schools hated each other's guts. And they still don't like each other that much. It's Colorado's probably biggest rival of all time, and ended when they swapped conferences. It was – I don't know if it's Nebraska's Oklahoma's. I mean, that's all been ruined by realignment. But – it's going to be interesting. I mean, they have USC and Oregon coming up here in a couple of weeks. They have, they've got the Pac-12's tough. The Pac-12 is going to be really tough. But if you told me that they were 8-4, like maybe even at like a sneaky 9-3, I'd buy it. Their defense isn't much to write home about, but their offense can clearly score, and they've got Travis Hunter, who's amazing. So those things are going to do well for them. Elsewhere, here, big game in the state of Texas. 2 big games in the state of Texas. One of them, A&M versus Miami, a game where both teams were total, absolute garbage last year. The only difference was just like Miami was a little bit hotter garbage than A&M, because A&M kicked their ass in Kyle Field, just really stuck it to them, and in a very boring offense. But the story with A&M is they brought in Bobby Petrino. He's the offensive coordinator now. He's calling plays. Jimbo's not micromanaging, supposedly. And then Miami, year 2, they're trying to do what Nebraska and Colorado are doing, is bring the 90s back to life. And that one's really interesting to me, even though like both these teams are not what I call contenders, but this is a big time, let's see where you are game.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, and I want to take a quick second because I know that it breaks your heart to see Miami struggle. I know you just lay awake. You just lay awake at night, just crying your eyes at Miami just struggling the way it has.
Pierre, FSU beat them so badly last year. My wife, Amanda, and I was watching the game with her, and my friends are calling, and I'm getting on, FaceTimes with people and everything. And I was talking to one of my college roommates, and honestly, in the middle of it, FSU, sacked the third string quarterback and it was the most comical looking play. And then you saw the Miami fans leaving, and we just laughed for 3 straight minutes. And she's like, you guys aren't even talking to each other. I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, that was hilarious. That moment right there was funnier than the tiger scene in The Hangover to me.
I mean, I know it definitely didn't break your heart. I mean, it's so funny to talk about this. We just talked about Nebraska and Miami. Now, the older I get, the more I keep thinking how far we've really distanced ourselves from just the power. It didn't feel like it was that long ago that Miami and Nebraska were playing in the title game. And it's mind blowing to me how I don't know I think Nebraska has fallen farther than Miami in my opinion, but I mean, boy, I think you're right. It's a little bit of a measuring stick game for both teams. Miami, even though they're not what Miami used to be, I mean, they're not New Mexico State, and I know Texas A&M knows that going on the road, and it's going to be a different story from what they saw in the season opener. But I think Miami. I know you're going to hate hearing me say this, but I mean, growing up, that was the team with the swag. I mean, we've seen the 30 for 30. That was the team with the 30 for 30s. They had swag. They were a power. They were fun to watch. And I looked at them and like, what happened to you guys? What happened to the Canes? What happened to this? It doesn't feel like it's got the same cachet.
You know how I feel about it? And this is weird. A lot of people don't believe me when I say this, but genuinely, I will trade it because when I was growing up and then when I was in college at FSU, Florida State, and Miami Florida State played both of them. Miami and Florida never played each other really. They will do a home and home once a decade. But the Florida State Miami game and the Florida State game swung the national title. Who was going to play for the national title. And now, Florida State, after the other night, appears to be back on the scene while the other two are still rebuilding. But I would trade, them being good again if we could all be good. And, as fans, the way, especially with Miami, Florida a little bit different, but especially with Miami, I will liken it to the Wes Mantooth and Ron Burgundy relationship.
Yes.
Right at the end where he's deep down with every inch of me, I straight up hate you, but damn it, I respect you. And that's what I want, and so I would like to see that because it's better for football to me if you have more teams that are consistently good, especially with big brands, than, hey, remember when Miami was good and Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake were dating? That was the same year. Those are the things that you have to think about. And I would just rather it be back to where Miami, Nebraska, Florida State, everybody's good. Florida's good. It sucks for me to say that, but it was better than watching two, 5 and 7 teams in a pillow fight.
It's not as fun. It's not as satisfying. It's you want to see Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock go head-to-head at their peak in front of a sold-out crowd with so much on the line. It's that kind of heat and intensity that you want because it's even though you're going to enjoy beating them, even if they're 5 and 7, but it's just if they're 9-0 and you guys are 9, I mean, you wouldn't meet that late in the season, I know, but for the sake of argument,
it's happened, yeah.
That's what you want, and that's what makes it great, and that's what makes the rivalry great. You want it to be that way.
Hey, there's nothing like the old school day. Florida and Florida State played the last game of the regular season for both of them, So there's nothing like 10-1 versus 11-0 that might swing the whole thing, or 11-0, 11-0. Those things late in the year, the SEC gets them all the time now, but those things late in the year are really great. I'd love to see them come back. And for Miami in particular, it just doesn't seem right that, they lost to Middle Tennessee State last year.
I know.
They lost to Middle Tennessee State. And it wasn't like a fluke. Middle Tennessee State was better. And on that day, like, it wasn't one of those things where like, oh, well, it was raining really hard and the backup quarterback was in and there was a really questionable call and they got a, kind of a late freaky touchdown on a punt return or something. No, it was just they got pummeled. So I'd like to see that come back a little bit.
Same. I think all college football fans would like to see it because it's better. It's one of those things. I mean, growing up, because I would watch the NBA religiously, and I still do to a certain degree. But growing up, you hear the league is better when the Knicks are good, which I don't agree with at all. Who cares? Who cares about the Knicks? But at the same time, it's one of those things when the traditional powers like Miami, Nebraska, some of these old school like powers that we grew up watching, Florida State when they were, in their heyday as well. College football is better when these teams, Tennessee was another team growing up that was a power. It's better when those programs are good, in my opinion. Some people might disagree, but in my opinion, when those traditional programs are good, it makes college football better, and that's what I want to see. We haven't really had that the last decade.
Yeah, and look, I kind of agree. Like, I don't care about, again, the Knicks. Like, that doesn't matter, but at least don't, have their owner spending more time with his garage band. Those kind of things. But have some dignity, for God's sakes. Like, that's how I feel about that one. All right, Oregon and Texas Tech. Joey McGuire was here at Baylor. I know him really well. They took a huge upset, Tech, last week, losing on the road at Wyoming. In my opinion, trap game in week one, where they might have not really know what they were getting into with Wyoming and, lost a little bit of focus, especially in the second half of that game. And then here comes Oregon. They won 81-7 over Portland State. They should probably get an assault charge. I mean, wipe it off their record, but just throw it up there. Like, hey, we saw what you did. That was bad. Portland State probably got $1 million to come in and get humiliated like that. So that was maybe even more. Who knows? But Oregon and Texas Tech in Lubbock, I think it's going to be fascinating because, Pierre, I don't like you. When you were here, Baylor and Tech were playing at AT&T Stadium. So we never got to go out to AT&T Jones AT&T Stadium and whatever they call it in whatever order. I'm sorry. But the tortilla tossing, group of drunken psychopaths. And I say that with love and respect.
Correct.
Keep being you, Texas Tech. But that is going to be a crazy atmosphere, and Tech's a little bit on the ropes because they had a lot of hype coming in.
Yeah, they really did. And I feel when you look at last week's game, boy, double overtime in Wyoming, it's just, oh man, I think you said it perfectly. It was a little bit of a trap game in week one. Now maybe it's a wake-up call. No, maybe it's a little bit of a wake-up call and Oregon comes in and who knows, maybe Texas Tech is on their A game. It's a little hard for me to see it right now. If I'm a betting man, which, I might be from time to time, but it's hard not to like Oregon in this game, but would I bet on this game? Absolutely not. No way would I, because I think the crowd is going to be awfully fired up. And you're playing a little bit desperate. Now, after week one, you're already a little bit desperate. You don't want to fall to 0-2. That would just be a disastrous start for Tech, but it's hard for me. And again, I know we just talked about this with Texas A&M, Portland State is not Texas Tech.
No.
So how much do I really take away from that game with Oregon? Not a ton. I knew that they would be good going into the season, but it doesn't, just clobbering Portland State in the manner that they did is not going to do anything for me. It's not going to change my opinion of them thinking, oh yeah, maybe this is a national title contender. No. So I think Texas Tech obviously has more to lose here, but it's hard for me to I'm not gambling on this game. Please, if anybody's watching, just don't gamble in general. But it's hard for me to pick Texas Tech in this game, but would it surprise me if they win? No, it wouldn't.
Yeah. All right, and on Oregon's side, I'll tell you, I've become a huge Bo Nix guy. I really like watching Bo Nix play. When he was at Auburn, you could see he had these little strands of this, he had a bit of it seemed to be like a hero complex where it's almost like he would shake out the cobwebs in the fourth quarter, be like, what, we're down by 10? All right, 7 minutes left? I got this. I'm going to go, don't call plays. I don't call plays. That's only going to mess me up if you call a play. I'm just going to go out there and make something happen. But now, when you see what happened last year under Kenny Dillingham, and obviously he's on to Arizona State, Bo Nix is a legit quarterback now, and he's using his powers for good, so to speak. And he is just fun to watch. So him against Texas Tech is going to be one of the best things to see all weekend, in my opinion.
No doubt. I think that's definitely a game I have circled. I mean, to be honest, when I was looking at the slate, Texas A&M and Miami was definitely the game that I feel like has the most intrigue for me personally. I want to see how it all plays out. But Oregon and Texas Tech is right there for sure.
Yeah, well, and of course the biggest game of the week is Texas versus Bama, which this is a non-conference game for the last time this year. And Texas had that game in their sights last year. Quinn Ewers got hurt. Bryce Young said, okay, I'm going to go beat Bryce Young, and brought Bama back, and they won the game. It was very close. But I do think that kind of popped Texas's balloon a little bit, because I think that even though they were good last year, they weren't great. But they were good last year and much better. They put a lot of eggs in that basket of like, okay, if we can win this one, then our confidence is going to be buoyed. And so then they had the game where right after they lost to Texas Tech in overtime. They lost to Kansas State. They lost to they lose to Kansas State? Yeah, and then they lost to TCU. And they got really kind of beat up at home against TCU in a game that was close, but they were not in it against TCU. And this year, I think that if Texas can go to Tuscaloosa, Bryant-Denny Stadium, which is a very tough place to play. I've been there, and it is one of those things where the fans are on them so fast. And then the game I was at was at a blowout. So it wasn't 4 hours of just like, oh my God, these people are psychos. It was like an hour and a half of that, and A&M got beat so bad. It was like, okay, well, what are we doing after this kind of a thing? Yeah. You guys got plans? But the way that will be is going to be interesting to see, because Texas is about to be in this atmosphere all the time now, and Bama's trying to prove that this is not a restart year for them, that they're still Bama. So, this one, obviously the game of the week, and the two biggest brands you could possibly have playing at this point in the season, maybe ever.
I know a lot of Texas fans are excited about their team this year, and I think with good reason. But, I mean, am I the only one in the pit of my stomach that feels that Alabama's going to win this game by 2 touchdowns? Maybe, I don't know. I could be wrong. I remember the game last year. What was it? A 2-point game? It was like 22-20.
Yeah, it was close. It came down to a field goal. Yeah.
Texas, I think, really missed an opportunity. If I'm remembering the game correctly, I think they missed a field goal before halftime, and I think missed maybe more than one field goal in that game. But they really missed an opportunity. They had Alabama right where they wanted them and blew it last year. So now that you have to go to Alabama, this is kind of, it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier when you want to see Florida State and Miami good at the same time. I want to see a game that ends up being 33-30 or 31-28 or 27. I want to see that game. I want to believe that that's the game I'm going to see, but I don't feel fully confident. And I don't like to reference stuff from the year previously, because football is such a year-to-year sport. Whatever happened in the year previously has no bearing on what's going to happen this Saturday. But how many times do I have to watch Texas have an opportunity in its hands and blow it? And how many times do I have to hear about Texas being back and Texas is going to be on the rise, just to see them kind of level out and really kind of just twist away in the wind and not really make an impact in college football like we saw 20 years ago? I'm not as jazzed about this game maybe as some other people, because I just don't believe it. I just don't believe that Texas is going to walk in there and keep things competitive. I just don't believe it.
Well, look, Pierre, you were here long enough. You understand how the Cowboy fandom works. A&M and Texas fans are in that same Venn diagram. Yeah. They overlap quite a bit, and it is not lost on me that the hype compared to the results is often the same, for all of them. Yes. And again, like, football is so vaulted here, and you get so much propaganda about all of them that eventually you start going, oh, well, yeah, no, like, this is it. And then I have a friend, and this is just covering the Cowboys, that I have to every year be like, listen, I know that you're excited. And I'm going to tell you, I think they're going to be good. But I do not want you like getting all fan bloggy on me because you said like, oh, why did they cut Will Greer? Like, look, Will Greer had a great last preseason game. You know, like, don't get excited. It's the same with Texas fans. We'll be like, well, why isn't Arch Manning playing? Well, he's a freshman who played in like 3A football in Louisiana. Like, let the kid develop. Like, he's not like Arch Manning's not going on social media and being like, you know, look, if I don't play, I'm going to transfer. Like, let it happen. You know, that like they'll say that if Quinn Ewers struggles a bit. And right now they all love Quinn Ewers, but if he struggles a bit, it's going to be a problem for them. So, and you'll have the whole thing starting over again. All right, we got to get to break. When we come back, this week in Coach Speak, something I know. Pierre is a huge fan of Coach Speak. I have walked out of many press conferences with Pierre as he was packing up his camera and muttering under his breath of, that was nothing. That was nothing. I'm going to let Pierre go on a Pierre rant here in a second. This is the Triple Option.